Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello everybody at home and welcome to Houselights, specifically House of Scott, Tony Scott. Tonight we are talking about 2006's Déjà Vu. Tonight we're talking about 2006's Déjà Vu, starring Denzel Washington, Paula Patton, and Jim Caviezel. And I am joined tonight, as I always am, with John Mills and Darren Moser. Darren, are you excited about tonight?
I am. I love me a good time-bending movie. This is kind of one that slipped through the cracks. Like to tip my hand, I really enjoyed the time travelness of this movie. I am kind of shocked I hadn't seen it yet until now. So it's going to be a fun discussion. It always was a fun discussion, and it always will be a fun discussion.
Mm. Well, you only think that because I sent a Post-it note to you several days ago saying you're going to have fun discussing this movie and talking about, this is Val Kilmer, before everything got bad for him. And it's always nice to revisit any movie with Val Kilmer in it, because even in what I would say is a thankless role, it's like the joke about Gene Hackman. He's good in anything, right? I've yet to see a bad Val Kilmer.
Small role, but like I saw his name at the beginning. I'm like, I love Christopher Pike, aka Bruce Greenwood.
See, that's what you nerds think of. I think of 13 Days,
the
movie about the
Cuban
13 Missile
days.
Crisis.
Yes, that's like the second thing I think of.
Yeah,
and we also get speaking of the cast, as we can keep going, we get another Matt Craven Denzel team up, like we did with Crimson Tide, and we also get Adam Goldberg, which he's in. Adam Goldberg plays Adam Goldberg, and no matter what he's in.
That is true. That is very, very true.
I thought it was Jake Gyllenhaal, and then I'm like, no, that is definitely not Jake Gyllenhaal, but had just a hint.
No offense to Adam Greenberg, but nobody's quite as dreamy as Jake Gyllenhaal. So,
We also get Erica Alexander, who I'm always excited to see, most famous from In Living Color.
And that's right. Yeah.
Yes, and also we get a non-speaking role with Elle Fanning, Dakota Fanning's sister. She's the one who loses her teddy bear into the drink.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, and also Eldon Henson, who played Foggy in Daredevil, and
that's where I recognized him from.
And a bunch.
He's also
I know this
Butterfly
guy.
Effect, and he was a kid actor in something. I'm blanking on it right now.
Mighty Ducks.
That's what it is. Mighty Ducks.
Mighty Ducks trilogy.
Yeah.
Playing Fulton Reed. Okay.
So, this is a stacked cast. Like this is a really, really great cast. If this came out today, maybe it could have gotten the new Oscar for greatest cast.
That's right.
Yeah, yes.
We haven't even seen that Oscar yet.
Wait, are you yanking my chain? Is that an actual Oscar?
No.
Okay.
I was like,
it's not greatest cast. It's great cast. It's best casting.
They're adding it. It's going to be a thing.
I think
so. Like the casting director wins or something.
I don't know. I need to read more about it, but I'm guessing the casting director gets it because
no stunts though. We can't make that a real.
Can't make stunts, but we can do casting director
stunts, please. Like that's a thing that people actually do anymore in this age of CNG and robots and stuff. Come on, now.
CNG.
Yes.
Speaking of stunts, so Jim Caviezel decided at the last minute, no, I want to do the stunt where I get hit by the car.
Really? Okay.
They're like, "Are you sure? Because you could easily get paralyzed." He's like, "Yeah. I want to do it."
You got to tip the hat to the guy. That's really commitment to your craft.
I was curious. So this is post Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel.
This was post Passion of the Christ, and there was actually again. I'm sorry. I'm stepping on you, Darren, but there was a in the screening of it. When Denzel first sees Jim Caviezel's character, he goes, "Jesus," really loud, and the entire theater erupts in laughter. And Tony Scott's like, "Well, gotta cut that."
Yep. A wise choice,
unintentional
probably.
but hilarious.
Unintentional but hilarious. Yeah,
that's really funny.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I can tell there's a lot of love coming from you guys. Now, I never saw this before. Darren, you never saw this before. Right. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know?
I've seen this before. I've seen this before a lot.
A lot. Okay. Does that
Yeah.
tip your hand as well? in
Remember,
terms of
we
your
know
review?
there's two types of movies in the Riddell household.
That's true.
Worn out, beloved family favorite VHS, and never even saw it. Wasn't my thing.
Barely heard of it. Yeah.
This one was a family favorite. This one we rewatched all the time.
No lies
Yes.
coming from me.
No, yeah, this one was so unlike last week when we talked about Man on Fire, that was really just my thing. Like I my family didn't like Man on Fire. That was a bit too violent to be a family favorite. But Déjà Vu was really nice middle ground there, because like it wasn't over the top violence like in Man on Fire. It wasn't gritty or anything like that. And also the editing, like Darren, you made the joke about how it was like Man on Fire was Tony Scott's editing turned up to 11. If that was turned up to 11, this was about like a 2 or a 3.
He contained that editing to the Déjà Vu machine. That had it, but it was just in the machine interface. And I'm like, that is a great idea.
Although he did have a little bit of fun with the credits still. Like there was still him peeking through and trying to be like, I'm not letting it completely go, guys. This is a signature thing now. I'm going to stick with this,
but
which
I
I
like
appreciate.
Opening titles, because it already started to build the tension. Because again, I knew something blew up, and I knew they were going to use a machine to fix it or figure out who did it. But you're seeing all these families, all these military people, and you're like, oh, it's not going to be a good day. It's going to be really bad.
Scott knows how to set a tone.
He does. He does.
He does know how to set a tone, but that's actually one of the things I'll cop to it because this is my first time seeing it and everything. Like it went on for a bit. Like it did. I don't know if I wouldn't
the titles, like the setup.
Not just the titles, but the whole setup, everybody getting on board. Like I couldn't help but feel like, I'm not like knocking it necessarily, but I'm just like, in the hands of another director, this part of the movie goes a lot faster because they're just saying like, look, this is the inciting incident. We don't need to spend too much time here, but I think that it works well enough because it establishes the humanity of all of the people on the boat. And I think that's probably what Scott was going for with stretching it and spending the time that he did, because those other directors who have it in a more compressed timeline to start the movie, you don't get a sense of the tragedy. You get a sense of the big explosion and the, oh gosh, what we have to solve. But this, you actually, it really, I think, messes with you like in an empathy sense, because you start seeing people and children and grandparents and people laughing and being happy and spending time together. And you're like,
a baby yawns.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It does mess with you quite a bit.
Well, and I was intently watching that because, again, time travel-ish movie. So I was looking for, are there things that I'm supposed to be picking up now that I will see later and understand later? And that didn't really end up being the case, except for like the guy standing on the bridge, but that was very obvious. So it didn't end up being that kind of if you watch it a second time, you're going to notice things in this opening setup. Like you said, John, it was really all about humanizing all of the to be killed people, not just the love interest. That was obviously the one we're supposed to care enough about.
Now, John, did you know that there was time travel in this movie before you watched it?
Yeah, I remember ads for it or so. Like there's enough about it in my brain, ad campaign, whatever, from the distant past that is sort of sitting in there. I also know that Déjà Vu comes out when, like, I think it's a year before Next, starring Nicolas Cage. And then there's no, I like Next. Don't you dare badmouth it.
We're one of like the 10 people who watch Next.
I know. That's true. And
then
I
just looked for Source Code, because
Source Code was 2011. Source Code's excellent. I love
very
Source Code.
Similar vibes.
Yeah, there's like Hollywood always seems to go in its fits and starts. And so I think like the 2000s, there's very much like a time travel vibe. I don't know if that taps into something where everybody wishes they could go back before 9/11 and be like, there's sort of like an obsessive psychic imprint, I guess, of like people wishing they could go back and stop a tragedy from happening. Maybe that's laying underneath everybody's universal subconscious or something like that.
It's quite possible. And speaking of, tragedy and everything like that, this was supposed to be filmed before Hurricane Katrina, but then Hurricane Katrina happened and halted production. And so they were able to film after Katrina and then integrated it into the story, and then also really emphasized and focused on hiring local talent as much as humanly possible in order to inject money into New Orleans. And also, like, the explosion of the ferry was the biggest special effects shot done in New Orleans, and I think maybe the state at the time. And they were very environmentally conscious of doing that, and because of what happened to the city and everything like that. So like this was a case of tragedy happening, and then instead of trying to market off of that tragedy, they integrated it into the story and again try to do well by the community. And I always really appreciated that when I heard about that story.
Kind of makes me think of some of the extra shots they put into Spider-Man after 9/11, like the people rallying against the Green Goblin. You mess with one of us, mess with all of us. Obviously not that, but they did make, I did pick up on the vibe of like, it's in New Orleans. They are not trying to be like any town USA. Like it's
right.
It's very specific that this is, and when they're driving out to find the bad guy's place, you're like, oh yeah, because they're just filming the devastation, that as they're driving through it. Yeah, well, like to answer like the question you asked, John, I like what I knew about this going into it. And I feel like this is one of those kind of movies, like obviously it did decent at the box office, but I felt like it wasn't necessarily marketed well. I think if it had been marketed better, young Darren would have been like, oh, gonna go see that for sure. Because the title Déjà Vu, the poster is like nothing. It's Denzel with a explosion in front of him. And so,
what more do you need,
I knew
man?
From the trailer, it's like, oh, we have this machine. Okay, I mean, but we have this machine, and it can look only this amount of time into the past. It's like a live view, but kind of a little bit of Batman Begin vibes, a little bit of his like magical sonar tech. We can see inside and outside and overside.
Oh, that's Dark Knight. You're thinking of Dark Knight.
Yeah, it's Batman. It's the same thing.
Don't do that. Don't take us down this road, Darren. Don't do that.
But
don't do that to us.
Yeah, I mean, but tying that into the, like John was saying, on the setup of the beginning of this movie, yeah, it was kind of odd because it was like it was going and then it kind of started, like a lot of setup on, what's Denzel's character doing? What are we looking into? And he's brought in front of the machine. I kept feeling like there was going to be some twist in the end where they were going to be like they had already identified him as a person who dies in some timeline. Like I felt like that shoe was going to drop. It never did. It wasn't part of the plot, but overall I felt like I liked the principles of time travel. It did use, I liked it. You have a lot of predestination. You have
okay. I want to talk to you about that. Because this. Okay, when I watched this for the first time, I was like, man, that was cool, because I don't know if I really knew how much time travel was involved. Like I didn't know how hardcore it was going to go. And then when he gets inside the machine, I'm like, oh, we're really doing this. Oh, okay, so this is like really time travel. Like he's straight up going to go into the past. Okay, so we're doing this. And so like I said, I was like, I didn't know much about it when I watched it. And, it was, explosions. It's fun. It's time travel. It's cool. Predestination, alternate timeline, and things like that. Like what we've always done. And then when I, watched it with the family, it was just kind of like, nostalgia, liked it, just watched it again. But then when I watched it this time in preparation for this podcast, I was like, wow, this time travel really doesn't make sense. And
that is true.
It really, really, really doesn't make sense. And so I tried to look it up, and someone tried to explain it. And I'm going to read this to you, and it is long.
Oh. Can you give us the Cliff Notes version?
No.
Oh.
So here we go. Real quick. I'm going to read it fast here. The events of the movie suggest at least 4 timelines exist. The movie begins in the 3rd timeline, where Agent Doug Carlin investigates the ferry bombing and the death of Claire Kuchever. In this timeline, he uses the machine to look into the earlier events of the same timeline to learn that Carol Orstat killed Claire and bombed the ferry. The presence of Doug's bloody clothing and fingerprints in the late Claire's apartment, however, indicate the presence of 2 previous timelines. In the 4th and final timeline, Doug's future self gets shot while preventing Claire's death. The audience learns that it was Claire's idea to go back to her apartment to dress his wounds. The audience also learned that it was Doug who crashed the ambulance into Carol's fish house in the 3rd timeline, which also indicates at least 2 previous timelines. In the 3rd timeline, since Claire was dead, the only way Doug would know to go to her apartment to dress his wounds is if she had given him the idea in a previous 2nd timeline. Since he already knew about her apartment in the 3rd timeline, then there must have been at least one previous 1st timeline where he did save Claire, but the ferry still blew up, necessitating the investigation into the past. The presence of his future self in the 2nd timeline necessitates at least one previous timeline that may or may not have included time travel. Below are all 4 timelines that must exist for the movie's logic to make sense. Timeline blah, 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 blah.
All right. I think I hear you. But I think that person is way overcomplicating.
I'm not getting that time back. So thanks so much for reading it to me.
Okay, Darren, but is he overcomplicating it? Because here's the thing. If you have to do that to make it make sense, it doesn't make sense.
I'm going to be over here while this happens.
So, again, I've only watched it once, so probably watching it a couple of times would help it sink in more. Really, what it comes down to, because I like that they keep the machine slightly ambiguous. We don't exactly know how it works. We don't exactly know how much power we have to control the past. Obviously, going to the past has a great effect. There's really 2, like they explain it. There's 2 outcomes. There's the girl dying and the girl not dying. And I get what you're saying, though, because it does start to become a circular argument because, when they go first to the crime scene and I noticed how they started to say like, oh, your fingerprints are everywhere. You've been a bad detective. It's like, because he had already been there in the past. And the way they do the phone recordings and, oh, someone's with me. Like we could already see those kind of hints of like, that's going to come into play later when we see it on the 2nd time around. But that if it was just a pure predestination paradox where it already did happen, I think it would be straight up. The problem is that things did change. She doesn't die. She doesn't get her fingers cut off. She doesn't, wash up at that appropriate time hours earlier. The bad guy ends up on the ferry. So yeah, I totally understand and agree. Yeah, if you look at it too deep, it starts to fall apart as he's making more and more of a change. But I kind of give it that just because that part, the divergence happens late enough in the story, especially after he's actually traveled through time, and that I can swallow it. Is it a perfect, closed loop and immaculate writing? No, but I think it's enough to get the point across on changing the fate at the end. And then it kind of caught me at the very end when I was like, oh, he's not going to make it because he already exists in this time and we can get our happy ending where he walked. Like, I didn't even see that coming until they were underwater. And then it all clicked and I'm like, oh,
the only way that I can wrap my head around it and try to make it make sense is a little bit like Donnie Darko, where you have multiple timelines collapsing on themselves in order to make one timeline. So like you have a bunch of tangent
as well.
Yeah. Well, frequency
is more linear of like,
haven't seen it. Spoiler alert.
Oh,
okay.
It's like 20
but Tristan
years old.
Knows what I mean.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
I think your Donnie Darko with the collapsing waveform of time makes more sense. But
okay, look, two things here. One, I'm willing to live with it because it becomes like a Sarah Connor sort of ending where she's the only one that remembers what the future was supposed to be.
Right. That's true.
And at the same time, she's actually the one that gets brought back from death or whatever. Denzel now will never know about the time travel thing. He can't, or does he?
Really
blah,
tell
blah,
her,
blah.
And she doesn't really have anything to tell.
So
him.
yes, it's the wave function collapsing on itself once it's observed, sort of thing. But number 2, I will totally cop to the fact that it's not confusing. It's just sort of underwhelming the way everything goes with this movie from where I was sitting, because so much of it seems I don't even want to say foregone conclusion because I was like, oh, of course, predestined. But like there wasn't the fire. And maybe the problem for me is that I love Man on Fire. I love how it's done. I love what's going on with it. And then this just feels so underwhelming to me in terms of those things. The movie comes alive once he time travels. Once he climbs in that machine, I'm like, oh, cool. The last 20 or so minutes of this are actually going to be pretty interesting now. But the build up to it just takes too long to get there. So I can honestly say, as just Johnny moviegoer, I don't care about the mechanics of it, because by that point in the movie, I was like, can we just end this? And then when it gets interesting, I'm like, I'll worry about it later. Like, I'm not sitting there worried about the time travel mechanics, because I'm like, it basically just, to use the phrase that was used a second ago, collapses on itself. It collapses on itself, just become an action movie. And it's like, it just becomes an action movie at that point. And it's like, okay, that's fine.
And I can see that, just because, like you said, this is no Man on Fire. Like, Man on Fire was a masterpiece. This is more of a standard action movie, well told, with a time travel twist thrown in. You could almost make this whole movie without the time travel, and it's just him like take the whole Déjà Vu machine out of it. It'd be more boring, but you could tell, like, it's not a really complex story. It just adds this time prep, which I liked.
You could make this just a detective story, and replace the corpse at the beginning as the MacGuffin with something else. Yeah.
It's a detective story where he has the ability to go back in time and change the outcome. That's the only twist, really.
I will say too that it's an incredibly fortunate thing that the center of the time travel machine thing was just perfectly fitted for 6'3" tall Denzel Washington to curl up in it.
Focusing on that area, I didn't quite get that either.
And also, like, why there's oxygen, and also why he can project sound into it, like, and have two-way communication.
Yeah.
That's one of those, like, it's a movie. Shut up.
How they got audio, because he asked them, and I don't think they.
I love that. I'm going to say it a third time. I friggin' love that, because that's one of the first questions out of his mouth is, how'd you get the audio? And they all just ignore him, because there's no explanation. Like, there's in the realm of that story, there's nothing that they could think of that would be convincing.
I mean, again, the only thing I could think of was like Dark Knight. See, I got it right this time. Where they could say, like, we've hacked into everybody's phones and have recordings from the last 4 days, and we're playing it back at the same time. But that goes in a whole nother direction. Like, I'm glad they didn't explain it. Like, that was fine. I didn't need an answer.
Yeah, or like, sound waves that bounce off the walls or something like that. Yeah. It's sci-fi. It's one of those things. Yeah. Oh, speaking of laser, okay. So that was something that kind of irked me on this watch. So I like that they were ambiguous with how it works, but at the same time, so we're in this high-tech, low-tech area. Like, it's a high-tech makeshift area where they have monitors everywhere. It's a projector showcasing what the machine can show.
It's a portable high-tech lab. It's meant to travel.
Exactly. And so are we supposed to believe that the main screen that they're looking at is the literal actual portal? Because if he's shining a laser at the screen, it's not just a projector. Like, that's the actual portal. So
they did say it is right there. You just can't see it. But they were also vague in that.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to quote Venkman from Ghostbusters. I don't know. Great question. Next.
Yeah.
I did love Denzel's reaction, though. Like, when he's finally had enough.
Yes.
And, like, he knows that everyone is lying to him, and he starts throwing stuff around and breaking a monitor. He's just like,
that monitor's dead.
No.
Is she dead? Yeah. We're like, okay.
He's like, I said, explain it to me. Okay. Not tell me.
Not talk to me like science.
Yeah. Not talk science to me. Explain it to me.
Yeah. It's just, but and of course, Denzel Washington, I think, is bringing everything he can to the role.
Now, Cobb, explain it. I mean, wait, wrong movie.
It's just, I honestly, I think that this is one of those things where it would have worked tremendously well as like a novel, but this is not a big screen story the way that I think they thought it was. And Denzel, the way I get to that is, like, Denzel's performance in those moments is great. He's trying to, like, you almost get the sense of, it's like when you go to see a live stage production and there's some point where, like, it's sort of like meh. And then one of the actors just seems to like come out like just absolutely trying to breathe life into the production. And it's like, that's where I see Denzel in a lot of this Mr. Washington in a lot of this is I see him being him, like really bringing commitment to the role. And Caviezel too. Caviezel's, he's like the guy is completely believable as who he is in this movie. He's like, he totally sells me on it. And I'd say that, aside from, as you've said, Tristan, the perpetual sunset. But with a Tony Scott movie, he just always gets his actors to show up. And there are plenty of actors, especially, big name actors that with a script that's sort of a little rough around the edges, they kind of phone it in. We've all seen movies where you can tell that the actor sort of is like, oh, okay, I'm kind of trapped. Let me just get this done. But everybody shows up with this commitment to still be as good as they can be. And it's like, I think Denzel Washington's performance is really, really symbolic, like the signpost of that.
Well, there's a lot of moments when, Denzel, and I think it's totally fine to say Denzel is Denzel without, like,
I've been watching him on screen for so long. Like I feel like I know him. So.
Well, he has one of those names that's unique. Like you don't,
that's true.
It's not ostentatious. Like when you say, like when you call Brad Pitt Brad or something like that, like that doesn't work, but with Denzel, you can do it. Darren, can you do me a favor? Can you look up the box office, a return on Man on Fire and Déjà Vu?
So for Déjà Vu, it was a budget of $75 million with a box office of 180. So kind of doubled. So not
more
terrible.
Than doubled. Good.
And then for the previous one, and just
Man on Fire didn't do that well.
Yeah, Man on Fire was a budget of 60 to 70 and returned 130. So a little bit less budget, a little less return. So but no, like, it made $700 million or $500 million. Like this one definitely, didn't lose money, but you throw in whatever they were calling marketing at the moment. And
well, this is still right before the dawn of the Marvel age too, though, where movies were not expected to make $600 to $1 billion.
This is also after Domino, because we skipped Domino.
We did skip Domino.
Which we hadn't. I love Domino.
Was $50 million budget, $23 million return. So that did not do well.
That hurt a little. That one stung.
And that one was much more in the Man on Fire editing style.
Oh yes, it was.
Way more. John, one thing I want to address and one thing that I want to talk about is I feel like kind of what you were getting at earlier is, and one thing that I noticed in my rewatch is that the second act really lingers. Like we're at the point when he, is brought into Val Kilmer's team, and then they go about their investigation up until he goes back in time. Would we agree that that's the second act?
Yeah, I agree. Sure.
And that's the section that feels really long. So I looked it up, and apparently all the scenes with the text talking is 40 minutes of the movie. Is just the text talking.
Wow.
And that was painfully obvious on this rewatch. And even though I like this movie, part of me was just like,
you could have cut 10 minutes out of that. Easy.
Yeah. This doesn't hold up as much as I wanted it to.
Not just cut. I agree with you, Darren. There are definitely places where this could be trimmed down. It's 2 hours 6, and I think this could have been 145. But I think that even going so far as to find an excuse to have somebody simply explain something or talk to him about something outside, like while they're getting a cup of coffee, or going out and saying, okay, look, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this. And then we're going to go and we're going to view, like, I know they had established the rules or whatever, but like whatever tweak you have to do to be like, oh, I can tell you, for instance, we have to calibrate the machine and I do this thing in a certain spot and we know to look for it to make sure the machine's still calibrated. And then they look back on like Val Kilmer getting a specific order at a specific Starbucks at a, hey, product placement for everybody. But you know what I'm saying? Like take exactly them outside of the environment and you've suddenly got a little more dynamism in that 40 minutes instead of just we're watching people watch something.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why Denzel Washington's character is so incredibly, relatable in the moment where he freaks out, because I'd be bored too. I'd be like, no, I'm standing right here. You're looking at a TV screen.
I did like in that second act, I liked the dual vision chase. Like that was very
interesting.
Creative and very interesting. The like you're watching in the past in this one eye, and I'm like, dude, as soon as he puts it on, he's driving. I'm like, what are you doing, man? You're gonna die.
A
You're gonna
young
crash.
Tim Cook saw that and said, "The Apple Vision Pro, that's what I'm going to make." Thank you.
So,
and it even had a battery that was connected to the car, so it's
true. Well, I kept thinking while that scene was going on wouldn't it be smarter just to put the headset in the dash and then have them watch it?
You have someone drive with you. One person drive, one person. But I mean, whatever.
No. Val Kilmer sitting there doing nothing, talking to the techs who are running everything. Very important. Because you have a chain of authority right there that's unbreakable.
They need a little bit better communication to look left. No, more left. Left. No, back to the left. I'm like, okay, come on, guys. Like,
yeah. And at the same time, you felt bad for Denzel Washington because you're sitting there and you're watching, and any of us who have played a video game know, like, we're getting frustrated on his behalf. Yeah, so exactly. True. It's like, come on, man.
Also, I feel like I'm overly sensitive to it now in a post superhero boom world, but like that car crash that he caused while doing that was way too big.
It should have been a fender bender.
Should have been a fender bender. Yeah, some people, no car should have flipped. Like multiple cars flipped, and he said he'd like, send paramedics. I'm like, you're the reason that happened, you jackass.
Well, on top of that, he's all caught up in this and all torn up to save one person's life. And he probably cost, 2 or 3 in that accident. So, I'm not being glib, but, maybe a little.
Well, although they did establish that his goal was, and rightfully so, focusing on her to find, like, at that moment they had found the bomber, and like that's the ultimate goal. But
yeah, but like,
no, you're
right.
But
the thing is, maybe that's part of the script needing a rewrite sort of thing, where his motivation was that, but it was also I think cheapened because they made him obsessed with going to save her. And I see this and I'm like, wait, what? Like, he's seen her on a TV screen, and like it just sort of.
Yeah,
that sort of landed
that was
flat
their big thing, was that he falls in love with her watching the last day of her life. Yeah, I can, read it right here. When they were writing the script, they had this flash of what if he fell in love with her by watching the last day of her life. And it feels like that because that is exactly what happens in the movie. And that has the kind of story moment. And you guys know what I'm talking about in other movies where they latch onto it and they won't kill that darling.
Yeah.
That will be what this movie is about, even if it kind of shouldn't. I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm just saying it has that all over it.
And speaking of the writers, this was the most expensive script to date, up to that date, purchase. It was $4.5 million.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
To buy that script.
Really?
Yeah.
And here I am pooping on it. I feel kind of like a jerk now.
Well, no, you shouldn't, because apparently Scott quit the project partway through, and Denzel almost did, and they basically did like massive rewrites that were so good that Scott and Denzel came back and were like, okay, we can do this. Like, it had issues.
But why did they sign on if they didn't like?
I'll
never understand Hollywood, man. I will just absolutely never understand that gig. Because it's like, if you disliked it, that whatever. Like it matters. Yeah.
A lot of that goes into it. Like you fall in love with the concept, and then you're like, all I need is Tony Scott and this concept, and I know I'm going to be in good hands. It could be something like that. Like, there's so much that goes into it. So many movies. I mean, dude, you're a hardcore prequels fan. So many movies get started without a script and finished, let alone one that is working on it as you go. And yeah. And okay, so one thing I do want to talk about is, we talked about how the editing is way toned down as opposed to Domino or Man on Fire and everything like that. But we did talk about how you can still see a little bit of it, within the titles and within the machine and everything like that. But I would love to talk about the cinematography. So, John, I want to talk to you first. Were there any moments that really screamed to you like, oh, this is still Tony Scott, even though the editing is toned down? The cinematography is clearly Tony Scott.
Well, I think I made the joke about the perpetual sunset. There's always a portion of the movie that has that smog filter on the top of it. And it's like, yeah, okay, there he is. There, I see him coming through. I mean, the selection of shots. I mean, the guy likes he likes to frame faces in a certain way. I very much feel that somebody could sit down and see this, and even without knowing Tony Scott's name, you could say, this was directed by the same guy that did Crimson Tide. And somebody would be like, yeah, okay, I could see that, or something like that. So I saw similarities there visually, where the unfortunate thing is that while I saw similarities, I also saw, and again, maybe this is just because I'm coming off of Man on Fire. This is my first time seeing this, but it's so much less inspired, so much less unique passion in this, that it feels like it also was possibly shot by a Tony Scott imitator, where he has such a signature style that when he's not wowing me, it becomes less distinct in its own way, right? Because there are people who have copied his style. And if you had me watch this and you robbed me of the ability to know that Tony Scott directed it, and you said, do you think Tony Scott directed this? I'd be like, yeah, I believe it, but I don't see anything that's like, boom, except for, of course, as we keep saying, the time travel machine. I'm like, oh, that's him. That's him. So long-winded, I guess. But yeah, I see him, but it's not his most inspired effort.
Was there anything specifically that you noticed about the night scenes?
As I'm trying to replay it in my brain, I mean, I'd have to be looking at the shots.
Darren,
I won't
was
lie.
there anything that screamed to you about the night scenes? And I'm gonna follow up with what I'm getting at. I just wanted to see if you guys noticed before I say it out loud.
When you first say night scenes, I think of the scenes in the goggles, because those were at night first. But I'm trying to remember night scenes. There weren't many.
It was shot on digital.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. No. Yeah. But absolutely, you can definitely tell a difference there. Yes. So because, and I know the shots you're specifically talking about too, because it does jump out at you where you're like, whoa, hey, that's different. Yes.
And to answer your question, Darren, not necessarily just the night shots, but it's just that's where it's very noticeable that it's digital HD is in the night shots, because at that time in 2006, it was for a feature film to utilize HD. It was still in its infancy. And now I'm not going to say that it was new, but it was still very young. And it surprised me because when I was watching it, and this was Tony Scott, I think this, listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was Tony Scott's first dalliance with HD. And then when you see the stuff in the machine, it completely makes sense that it looks different than the rest of the film. But then I also noticed it a few other times when we were outside the machine. He utilized HD. So it makes me wonder, I would love to find out more, because, he also shot on the RE Flex, like he likes to do, using Panavision lenses and everything like that. But like he did with Man on Fire and Domino, but with Déjà Vu, he mixed in the Panavision Genesis HD camera, which I think the first movie to ever use that, like first big movie, was Superman Returns. And Tokyo, like that year, here in 2006, Apocalypto, Click, Flyboys, Scary Movie 4, Superman Returns, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift were the major motion pictures besides Déjà Vu that used that camera. And it was, the Genesis was used all the way up to 2012 with Ted. Ted was the last movie to use that specific camera, and of course it was replaced by something that Red made. But anyway, I'm getting geeky, but I just wanted to say that it was really interesting to see Tony Scott use digital in 2006.
Yeah, I'm seeing notes on like the reception and stuff like that, and I feel like a lot of people's overall view on this is, for this story, Tony Scott may have not been the best choice. He definitely gave it a more actiony flair, and it seems like the writer was really unhappy and didn't even watch the movie afterwards. But it maybe in the hands of like a Cameron or something like that, this kind of a story where they're really going to lean into the sci-fi aspect instead of the backdrop of an action movie, which is not bad. It's just what we got. What do you think on that, John?
No, the thing is, I'm still fixated on the digital thing, because Collateral.
Sorry.
No, like Collateral. Like this is when the experimentation is starting to happen, because there are because like in Collateral, Michael Mann starts experimenting with digital, and then
that has to be like the most famous example in a major Hollywood film.
But it is one of those things where, yeah, those shots are definitely those shots. Like you can definitely pick up on that sort of thing. But is Tony Scott the wrong director for this? I don't know who's the right director.
I mean, if we're still talking about digital, like Collateral came out in 2004, Attack of the Clones came out in 2002.
Yeah,
that was
HD.
Digital. Yeah,
that was the first. So that's why I really wanted to say, like,
the digital pipeline.
Oh my gosh, yes! I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I actually used my senior thesis speech, not senior, no, my freshman speech, like in college. I went thesis. in the university I went to, like, they make every freshman write a speech and give it in front of the entire school. And mine was on the digital revolution, and I used Attack of the Clones as an example of the digital pipeline and how it was the first movie to have a first gen copy. Like there was no data loss.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like when you film a movie and then put it into the computer,
that's what resolution it was shot at. But yeah, first gen.
Yeah, you're losing you're losing a generation. Like this one, there is no generation loss. Anyway, but that was in 2002, Collateral's in 2004, and then it becomes more mainstream. It's still, like I said, it's still young in 2006, but it becomes more mainstream. And so, it just made me think of, like, when I was thinking about, like, other directors, I was just like, oh, could this be a George Lucas movie? Maybe, like, because, I mean, actually, it probably would be about the same, because it's a lot of sitting and talking. So it's very Lucasian, like in New Millennium.
Really?
Lucas.
Really?
Yeah, I went there. Yeah.
You got to do that? Okay. All right. That's fine. But back to the question of whether Tony Scott's the right director for this, I think that he makes the last half hour interesting in a way that other directors wouldn't. It would have just I probably would have tapped out if it hadn't been him. Even with it being him, there's barely enough to keep me with it to the end. My question, while we're talking about all this production stuff, is this movie apparently won something called the International Gold Reel Award for sound editing. And so I think that's something that can be easily overlooked, especially when you're talking about, time travel stuff and listening and watching and all of that. Was there anything about the sound that, like, popped out at anybody? Because for me, I'm like, I read that and I'm like, okay, there wasn't anything in this where I was like, wow, that's such great sound editing. Like, it didn't really.
I could see it though, because especially in the time travel or the, where they're using the machine, like, you're making
definitely
a really complex soundscape to, we take cues of, like, what are we hearing in our left and right ear, and, like, all of that is made from scratch. Not that it's not in a normal movie, but although I will say the beep they had every single time it kind of, like, refocused was a little louder than I think it needed to be, because we heard it many, many times. It was like beep, beep. I'm like, okay, we get it.
Also, they took some
control and a beep.
They took some sound effects from Blade Runner as well, which I thought was fun. No, one thing before we close up shop, and one thing that we didn't talk about, it's just Denzel's character. I really like Doug Carlin, and I love his introduction and the type of investigator that he is. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's this moment that has stuck with me since 2006 from when I saw this, and I even repeat it in my daily life, where, like, he goes to Bruce Greenwood and he lays out the entire investigation at his feet with the evidence, with with motive, and maybe not motive, but you know what I'm saying. Like, he lays out the whole story, and then Bruce Greenwood's just like, yeah, we can look into that. And then Denzel just kind of takes a moment, looks at him and goes, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just only Denzel could deliver that way, and all of us know exactly what's going on in his head. Like, maybe not only Denzel, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's just
Denzel was really good in this. Like,
Denzel was
this role,
really good in this.
Even
though, like, I totally get,
he doesn't know what's going on, but he jumps in.
Denzel saw himself as the audience in this movie, and I think that really shines through. All right, so let's wrap it up, Darren. Briefly.
We already wrapped it up, Tristan.
He could have been standing right behind us, and then boom, he's gone. Darren, briefly, can you give us your rationale for your rating?
So it finally just clicked for me, because this movie takes a lot from a lot of other different things. We were talking about source code and other things. Really, this movie tried to do what Minority Report succeeded at. Minority Report is very similar, and you have kind of precognition, and it leads to like the choice of fate and decision. Obviously, I think the superior film is Minority Report to this one. But like John said, I think Tony Scott did a decent job. Like, I was entertained. I had fun. I think they left enough gaps on like explaining it, like purposely not. And I think that worked really well. I think Denzel was wonderfully cast on that. I mean, I'm not surprised it's Denzel. It's Tony Scott. Of course it's going to be Denzel. It shocks nobody. But he delivered. It's kind of like an episode of Star Trek, really, where like someone gets pulled into future tech and they don't know how it works. All they know is they got to save the girl and do their job. So for the first time watching this, I'm going to give it a solid 4. I really enjoyed it.
Hey,
I will put it in my rotation on my shelf of time travel movies. Probably rewatch Frequency and a couple others. But so, yeah, I wish Past Darren had given it a chance, but finally catching it up with 2 of my best friends, it was very enjoyable. So 4 stars.
Man, I wasn't expecting that high. I think that's fantastic. I'm glad that you enjoyed it so much. John, are you going to give it a 4 too?
I am not. Like I was saying, I was kind of bored by the time they sent him back, and then suddenly the movie came back to life, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we're going again." And it's not Tony Scott's best work, and so I wind up landing with a 2.5.
Ooh,
yeah,
2.5, brutal.
That's where I'm at.
Ooh, not
that's
even
rough.
a 3. Wow,
Man,
not even a 3.
Sheesh.
All right.
Okay.
Well, me, even though I really like this movie, and I will rewatch it again, I'll keep it in the rotation. I think, the old family favorite. I think it's a great Denzel movie. I think it's a great action film that kind of drags in the middle. And upon rewatches, I think some of the magic is lost. But I'm going to give it a generous 3.5 stars with a lot of love. So there you have it, folks. We have a 4, a 3.5. And a debilitating 2.5. And, Darren, can you tell us what we're going to do next week on Houselights, House of Scott?
But we already did it last week. Just kidding. I know, too many time travel jokes. Next week, we're going to be ending the House of Tony Scott with 2010's Unstoppable here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.